All right, hi everyone. Welcome to the Grantek and GS1 US webinar on integrating case label printers to evolve your supply chain. Before we get into what we're going to be talking about and some introductions and getting started, we want to make sure you're in the right class and you're at the right webinar. So sorry if this brings up a sad memory from high school or college where you went to the wrong place and everyone laughed at you. But we want to talk through some of the real business drivers and values that we think you can get from this webinar. And some of the topics we're going to be going over. So some of it is FSMA 204, so new proposed regulations. Are you ready for that? Do you know how that's coming or what's going on with that? What's some of the trends in customers? And this is like end customers, grocery, food service units. What are they looking for on traceability? Where do we think things changing? Are you having problems with recalls? That's another big one. You're getting problems from print quality. You're getting problems from code date recalls and some other, autonomous retail, some other trends, new things that are coming. Have you heard of that? You got a plan? And really supply chain, I think we're all living the supply chain chaos on it. And what are some things that manufacturers and all the people in the supply chain can do together, and things about print quality. Again, we're seeing lots of print quality. So these are some of the business drivers and topics we're going to be going through in the webinar, and we wanted to get kind of right to that first. Now, this is a webinar. I imagine in the age of COVID, everyone's been a lot of webinars. Just some comments on how we're going to be doing these. So there are a few polls that will be coming up. Please do answer the polls. It helps us tailor this and really give a better experience for you. And the chat is also available. So the way the chat works is if you post in the chat, we will see what you're messaging, and we'll kind of be taking questions towards the end. So if a question comes to you in the middle, don't hesitate, put it in the chat, but you won't be able to see other people's kind of comments in the chat. And so what's the agenda? We're going to be doing some very brief introductions on who I am and my partner Lucy from GS1 US. We're going to not get Lucy fired by going over some legal things that are important. And then we're going to talk, Lucy's going to talk at that point on trends in case labeling. And then I'm going to bring it back to, Lucy's talking about trends and the future state and where things are trending. And then myself, Dave from Grantek, I'm going to bring it back to kind of what's happening right now. What are we doing with our customers, manufacturers, leading manufacturers right now around supply chain and around case labeling. So getting right into an introduction. So I'm David McKenna, based out of Toronto, Ontario. Been in manufacturing for 19 years with Grantek, doing everything from custom integration, consulting on digital transformation, and now leading this printer integration as a product, as well as our label verification solution that we also offer. Lucy.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We're very excited to have all of you here. So I'm Lucy Angarita. I am Director of Community Engagement at GS1 US. So what I do, my role, and many of us do, is we bring food companies together, from solution providers, distributors, manufacturers, operators, retailers, to talk about their supply chain challenges and how to come together to find solutions. So this is a really nice way to get even competitors to talk, right? This is where we all collaborate on common challenges and come up with solutions that help all of us. So before that, actually, I worked at U.P.C, which is the supply chain arm of Subway. And one of my main job functions there was to implement GS1 standards across the supply chain. So I worked with all trading partners to make sure that we established a foundation of data accuracy and that we all could benefit from end-to-end supply chain traceability. That was the ultimate goal. Next. So we like to keep our legal happy, and I'm going to share our antitrust. Many of you know this, but we are committed to complying with antitrust laws. Therefore, we don't discuss any pricing, margins, discounts, suppliers, any other competitively sensitive topics in this webinar presentations that we have. And if you want to know more about our antitrust, you can go ahead to that link and get more information. Next. This is actually just for your reference, our legal disclosure. You can go ahead, Dave. And then the trademark notices. All right. So on to the next slide. We are going to share a lot of interesting topics today. Criticality of accurate data sharing is the first one. Why do we need GS1 standards, and why are barcodes, specifically GS1 128 barcodes, helpful? Then we're going to talk about the benefits, supply chain transparency, visibility, efficiencies, and what emerging drivers and trends are out there. What are we hearing from our different company members on what is happening, what they want to do, and how they plan to execute it. But before we get into all this cool stuff, I want to ask all of you a quick question. So go ahead, Dave. Next. Do you believe companies can successfully do business without a common language? And what I mean by a common language is having unique identifiers that everybody can recognize for products, locations, for companies, and even the business transactions, using the same language to do, invoices or ordering, all these things we do in our businesses day to day. So that's pretty much the question. I'm going to allow like a few seconds. You need to answer quickly. Just kidding. Moving right along. We have 9 answers so far. Awesome. Let's go to our next slide. So it's not surprising. I'm going to talk about data quality. So of course you put 100%, right, of our audience saying it is critical. But now, really more than ever, we are seeing how critical data accuracy is, right? Because our world is ever changing. Many food companies are looking into, okay, I need one source of truth for my product information, for my location information. How do I get, standardized business transactions for all our partners? Now, what is this important, right? And those of you that know me know I can talk about this for hours. So I'm just going to go through 3 important things and main reasons why data accurate, why data sharing, but not only that, but it being accurate is so important. So first is our customers are demanding it. I mean, customers are not really looking to order a product and get the wrong one, right? The second one is supply chain partners are actually requiring it, not just as a need to do business, but it's like more of a requirement to do business. And also regulatory compliance, which is one of our big focuses in food since maybe September of 2020. And I'm going to share a little bit more of that. So we can stay right on this slide, David. Thank you. And I'm going to go into a little more detail into why your customers are demanding it. Now, we all know and we all hear a lot about the pandemic and how hard it's been for all of us, supply chain companies and people, right? Like everybody. But actually, also, we're a very fortunate generation if we think about it, because we have been able to witness an acceleration that really in our lifetime, and next maybe 100 years, who knows if it's going to happen like that, right? This unexpected disruption brought new solutions, brought new speed of innovation, new technologies. Companies are willing to just be more resilient than ever. They're willing to take that leap and make change happen. So not only companies, but consumers. We as consumers have changed our behavior dramatically. Now, let me give you an example. Let's say we're ordering dinner tonight, right? Or I'm ordering my favorite wine from this website that I love, and then I get the wrong thing. Or maybe they tell me, oh, you know what? It's not available anymore after I've ordered it. I see the tension. Everybody's getting like, oh, stressed out right here, right? I mean, this is something we're not willing to negotiate it anymore. And for the right order, for the right product to go to the right customer every single time, if we think about it, everything that has to happen from when the product is manufactured all the way to the supply chain, a lot needs to be synchronized and work perfectly, right? For it to happen every time. Next slide. So another big reason is we need to communicate with our trading partners. I mean, this is something that many times we know it happens, but imagine if I was speaking Spanish to you right now. It would be great for me because I'm Colombian, so it'll be easy. But how many of you would be closing your browsers right now? Like, I'm not even going to bother, right? Using Google Translator. But our businesses, sometimes we're like, okay, you can interpret my internal numbers. Here's a list. Go ahead and map it. Or, this is the transaction I'm sending to you, and you figure out how to ingest it in your systems. We do this all the time. So being able to react at the pace that we need to our consumer demands, enable a safer supply chain, and drive operational efficiencies while we're doing that is actually possible. I mean, people have measured tangible ROI by doing this. We have actually one of our members, and I think you're on this webinar, that has measured a cost avoidance of $72 million a year by being able to automate the way they do inventory in their restaurants. And this is one of the big factors. They've implemented GS1 standards, but they're using GTINs. Everybody can recognize that, from the manufacturer to the distributor to the restaurant. And connecting all of this information can help expedite and automate so many things in the different restaurants. Next. And last but not least, we have the new era of smarter food safety. If you're in food, you know what this is. And since 2011, I believe, when we started eating kale more, I guess, instead of spinach, just saying. I mean, kale, you gotta love it or hate it, right? But anyway, with all of these issues, the Food Safety Modernization Act was put into place. And more recently, Frank Yanis, the Deputy Commissioner for Food Policy and Response at the FDA, is actually working super hard to get all food companies to establish FSMA as a continuous improvement process. It's a food safety culture. What he's saying is we all need to come together, have more tech-enabled traceability, have smarter tools for prevention. Overall, just live this food safety culture. So FSMA 204 specifically is a proposed rule that they actually published in September 2020, and everybody was making comments around this proposed rule. And they actually are reviewing all of that and plan to finalize it by November of 2022. Once that proposed rule is final, companies will have 2 years to comply. And what is it about? It's pretty much um, being able to capture and share information when they need it about a specific list of products as it moves along the supply chain. So it's where it's coming from, where it's going, what the product is, what the lot code is, etc. And it really takes participation of every single link in the supply chain to make this work. It's really, nobody can do this in isolation. So we're all working together to make sure we can make this happen. Next slide. All right. So now that I discussed the 3 big drivers of why accurate data sharing in one common language is a must, I want to talk to you a little bit of how GS1 standards can help. Next slide, please, Dave. Now, we all use GS1 standards every single day. Not everybody knows that, right? But when we go to the grocery store and we scan products at our checkout, that's GS1 standards. Those barcodes are exactly that. So besides grocery stores, GS1 standards are used in many other ways. For example, e-commerce, right? GTIN has been a big identifier, the global trade item number, that a lot of marketplaces are using. Healthcare, for example, you go to a hospital, you get a little bracelet, people can scan and give you the drugs you need or whatever. That's actually GS1 standards behind that. So we support over 1.5 million companies around the world. They use GS1 standards, and specifically in the US, we serve more than 300,000 businesses. And that is, different industries, over 25 actually. The barcodes that are scanned every day, actually, there's 6 billion barcodes. We also support that. Next, Dave. Now, I think this is a really cool example of how GS1 standards work. So imagine this. You're going on a trip to Europe. It's a business trip. You have a meeting. You're late. Your hair is wet. You have to dry it, okay? I'm talking to maybe ladies more than men. But anyway, we need to blow dry our hair. We're going to connect this outlet our blow dryer to the outlet, and guess what? It does not fit. We need current, and if we don't have an adapter, what happens? Our hair's going to be wet, right, for a while. So this is just one example, but imagine, for example, with traffic lights. What happens if we don't have standards and everybody doesn't know that a red light is stop? Or train tracks or computer languages? All of these things have actually standards. If not, our world will be so chaotic. Let's move. Next one, please. So what GS1 Standards does is it makes it possible to identify, capture, and share information automatically and accurately. So what is it? It's identifying products, locations, companies, right? All kinds of things that happen in our supply chain. And then after we identify them, we need to capture information. That's where the barcodes come in. So that very first one you see there, the EAN U.P.C barcode, is what you typically use when you check out in the supermarket, right? Did you know what the first scan of a barcode was? This is really cool. It was actually a pack of Wrigley's chewing gum in 1974. And since then, you can imagine how it was revolutionary. I mean, I go to the checkout. You imagine the lines that used to happen when the cashier had to go ping, ping, ping for each item. I mean, our kids wouldn't believe this, but this is exactly what used to happen. Now imagine that happening throughout our supply chain. Our supply chain, we can actually scan pallets, cases. We can actually, there's other data carriers such as RFID, right? Where antennas are just capturing all this information. So all of this could become so much more efficient. And GS1 standards also help share that information. So there's the GDSN, the Global Data Synchronization Network, that helps everybody send information about their products and also get that information. So as product is updated, as information is updated, all supply chain partners, everybody gets it at the same time. And this, you don't have to wait for whoever to come back from vacation or to send an email so people update their master data. This is something that happens through the network and everybody gets it real time. Next. Oh, sorry. Let's go back for a minute. I actually forgot to mention there's also the transactional data. A lot of you know and use EDI. I mean, it's been around for a while. So for invoices, for ordering, etc., that is what EDI is used for. And then there's EPCIS, which is a language specifically for event data. And this is as the product moves along the supply chain, you can send information, what it is, where it's going, where it came from, etc. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Dave. Now we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about the barcode itself, the GS1 128 barcode. So this specific barcode enables traceability, right? A lot of us are looking for that. The manufacturer can actually put on a case a GTIN, an expiration date, a net weight, and a batch and lot number. Sorry, I got. So as the product is moving, actually people can grab that information from the source and share it with each other to know exactly what I'm sending, exactly what I'm receiving. And one of the industries that uses this a lot is the produce industry, but many others are using it today. Next. So now that I mentioned what the foundational elements of the standards are, we're going to talk a little bit about the benefits. Next slide. Now, to stay on traceability, right? We know the foundation of traceability is unique identification. What do we need to identify? Well, the objects, the places, the products, the parties that are involved, right? And it also includes the sharing of data, right? We want to have that, understand how the object is moving and we can interpret exactly where it is and where it's going. So traceability has two pieces, right? One is the tracking backwards. The tracing backwards, which is where the product has been, and then the tracking where it's going. So if we look at those little squares, the blue labels, those are all the identifiers that are involved as a product is manufactured, it's put into a case or a pallet, and then it moves through the different supply chain partners. Go ahead, next. Now we know that supply chain is really not linear, right? It has a lot of complexities and webs of interconnected relationships. So next. But when we want to know, let's say in a restaurant, where that lot of lettuce or spinach came from, right? If we want to pinpoint, for example, a processor, they need to know where their chicken thighs are. Then we depend on traceability, right? To be able to understand that journey of objects through the different parties, through the different places to understand exactly what we need. So that is exactly what GS1 standards can do. Next slide. Now here's a really good news. We see all these things we have, and a lot of you might be thinking, okay, so where do I start? What do I have to do? I have to identify my items. I have to identify my locations, etc. But the great news is it pays off. So having visibility over all these transactions opens a whole new world of opportunities for better supply chain management. And I'm just going to talk about two specifically. Of course, we know recall readiness is critical, right? Every second that passes, the risk grows exponentially. And precise and targeted recalls actually have ROI because you actually don't have to throw away a lot of good product. You can access the locations that you know have the product, and you don't have to wait for such a long time to cast a very wide net. Even if you have to reach out to everybody, you can focus on the ones that you know have the product. The other one is inventory management accuracy. I mean, did you know that yesterday was Stop Food Waste Earth Day? Did you know that, Dave?
I
So
did not.
yeah, 1/3 we've heard of the food produced worldwide actually ends up in waste. That's equivalent to $218 billion. So imagine how many people could be fed if we were better at managing our resources. Well, inventory management enables that because there's better stock rotation, better invoicing, reduced mispicks, out of stocks, faster fulfillment, on shelf availability. All of this reduces waste. And that is just two of these many others I'm mentioning here. Go ahead, Dave. Next. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing out there, right? The emerging drivers and trends. Everybody talks about digital disruption, digitization. Did I say that right, by the way? I'm Colombian, remember. So, all right. So that's a big focus, right? But all these smart devices, IoT devices, getting all these real-time data, and you're capturing all this information, really what you need to make informed business decisions is a way not only to interpret this data, to consume this data and analyze it, but also to constantly monitor it for accuracy. And this is what the standards do. So our GS1 corporate development team is actually all the time out there talking to our industry members, trying to understand what are the emerging trends. We hear a lot autonomous retail, circular economy. Like Vivian Tai, one of our innovation managers, would say, elements in the periodic table are actually not infinite. They will run out. Okay, that's scary to me, but it's true. So if we can better manage our inventory, if we can better track our resources, we can definitely help eliminate the waste. And then blockchain. It's a term that we've heard for a while. There was actually a seafood pilot that GS1 with a lot of other companies and solution providers worked on last year. And it was more to see if, how to capture information about the seafood product as we went through the supply chain. And at the end of the day, what they found out is interoperability, sharing this in one language, having the unique identifiers that everybody could recognize, that is the foundation. Not specifically blockchain as a technology, but really the interoperability of different providers, different companies being able to talk and to connect all those little pieces of the puzzle. That was pretty interesting. Next. So here are some resources we added for you. There's a few links there on, more for traceability or supply chain visibility. But at the end of this presentation, you also have my contact information. You can always reach out to me, and I can help you through exactly what you need to get started or to continue your journey. And then the next slide. Here is some of the things that our GS1 US University can do. You can send your teams to be trained, and if you visit gs1us.org, you can get all that information. And thank you. This is the end of my presentation, and I will go ahead and send it over to Dave now.
Perfect. Thank you, Lucy. And I can definitely see, I mean, I think it's a mindset shift in manufacturing on food safety being continuous improvement and having to be constantly, okay, what are you adding? And I mean, in many plants and companies, it's seen as a requirement and something that's critical, but you know, we're going to do what we need to do. And then it's a cost center and we're not adding. And so I think, I mean, that new proposed regulation where this needs to be continuously improved is something to watch out for and make sure that you have a plan and you've got the infrastructure to support that. And that's really something we're seeing from leading customers that we're working with. But first, I'm going to do a kind of a very important poll question. When I started getting into this, I wanted to make sure that I spelled labeler correctly. And I found two different spellings. I'm going to wait. We're going to pause to poll the industry and see which do you see for labeler? Is it labeler or labeler? Or you know what? You use both. Let's give it a minute here and get an answer to this important query. Okay, pretty heavily on the labeler at the top, not labeler. Honestly, I went to a major printer manufacturer that prints case labelers, and I saw both on their website. So I think both are actually in widespread use. Now on to a next poll question. This is a little, perhaps a little more serious. On your facility or your company, how are you handling case labeling? And some of this is going to depend on the mix of people we have here. If we have manufacturers, if we have bulk companies, hey, you make wheat or steel or something like that. What are you doing? How are you handling this? How are you handling new requirements in the industry? Are you upgrading your printers? Are you upgrading software and leaving the printers? Are you doing both? Or, you know what, nothing right now, we're looking at it. So we'll give it another minute to see some of the responses. Interesting mix here, actually, of no action, both, and upgrading printers. So that's interesting to see, and that's kind of honestly I'm really interested to see actually that poll response, because those are the tracks that we're seeing with customers and with leading manufacturers who are moving ahead on this. And there's really, in modernizing your case printing, in getting an infrastructure or platform that can handle continuous improvement in food safety and meeting these customer requirements, we're seeing two tracks. And one is integrating your printers. So you're keeping your existing printers, your existing markers, so we'll include laser markers and other kind of devices in there. Or you're buying new equipment, you're buying new printers. So you're keeping what you have or you're buying new ones. And just to delve deeper into the first one. So integrating printers, what does that mean exactly? So what we're doing with leading customers is, you're networking them. So there's a lot of talk about Industry 4.0 and IoT and data and connecting everything and smart everythings. It's kind of funny and surprising that something as key to your packaging line as your case printer or your laser scanner that's putting your code date on it and all that equipment is often neglected. And it hasn't really been part of an automation system or part of a line control at many, many, many factories. So to me, this is a highly valuable IoT thing that is actually a key piece of equipment that's probably been more neglected than it should be. So the first step on that is networking those devices. The second is controlling it with one modern system. So if you can see on the screen here, we've got a handheld kind of pendant type control system. And that's the kind of thing you often see for controlling your code. Now, some are better than others and some are moderner than fancier than others, but it's kind of common to see something like this, an interface like this for controlling your code date. And again, is that something you really want with the turnover we're all having, and you're going to get recalls if that's done wrong? Is that the kind of interface that you want operators using? That new operator on third shift potentially having to type some information in to change that date, or is there a better way? And that's where we're leading. And the other piece is, it's a printer, but it's not a means to it's not an end of itself. And then it's part of a line. So, you know, in some instances, if that printing's not working, we need to find that out. You need to verify that with inspection systems. Maybe you want to stop the line. You need a reject system. So tying all these pieces together in a coordinated packaging line and doing real IoT on on a key piece of equipment that's a key part of that packaging line is what major customers are doing with us. And to get to that, excuse me for one moment here. I'm just going to pause for one quick second, actually. And we're back. And how customers are doing that, and we're doing it with major customers with a software package called Ignition. So Ignition is a SCADA system. It lets you tie all the devices together on your line very nicely. So you can connect to printers, you can connect directly to laser markers, barcode scanners, and all your line equipment, the conveyor control system, a database with all their SKUs. And you know what? You have a list of SKUs, you have a list of, you have all your master data with your shelf life information off in a database. You know, that's accessible as well. And so that's a great platform that we're using. And these are real projects that are happening where a laser code data, again, we're not going to have our new operator use a glorified Texas Instruments calculator type interface. We're going to make a modern screen for them. It's going to be web-based. It's going to be responsive. It's going to have security levels. It's going to have access restrictions, letting quality do certain tasks that operators can't. And it's easy to use and clear and large, and it gives you that degree of control and a mod that comes with a modern interface. And then the other piece to this is in a big plant, or even in a modest-sized plant. You know, people are running with leaner maintenance teams than ever before, and they got to maintain all this. If you're having a problem with any of these pieces of equipment, you know, how many stack lights are in your plant? Does each of these devices have their own stack light, and who's really able to keep an eye on all that? Again, especially since the last maintenance person quit because it's 2022, and apparently that's what everyone does now. So another piece of this is pulling data from all those systems and being able to display status information across all of it, so you can get your maintenance team out there faster. So really smartening up your line and connecting all the pieces on it from the case printer, the laser marker, the other devices, to pull status and to provide control with modern kind of interfaces. The second thing we're seeing people do is replace printers. And this is a real one that we've had significant level amounts of work on. Turnkey installations we're doing to replace printers. And it's really mostly being driven by new requirements for G10 and GS128 barcodes. Requirements, these are from a lot of food manufacturers, but their customers are requiring higher print quality. The food manufacturers are getting fined by their customers for poor print quality. And there's limits to this. I mean, there's times where inkjet is really the way to go. There's times where it creates challenges, and you want to potentially do print and apply. And we're seeing kind of a mix of both. And this really is another piece that people are doing. And the add-on to that is, and I think the key moment or key idea to kind of take from this is, if you're going to put an investment in new printers on your line to meet your customer requirements, to meet fines you're having around print quality, to add new information. This is another reason for this with greater traceability. You need to get more information on that label, on that barcode. You can't just go with those pre-printed shipper cases you've been using forever, because that doesn't have the batch number. It can't have the batch number or the lot number. It can't have the expiration date on it. It can't have other information on it that's only available immediately when you pack that case. And so if you're going to buy these printers and put an investment into this, do you really want to just put in a printer that's, again, an isolated piece of automation that's not linked to anything else on the line? It can't tell the line to stop if there's some issue with it. It doesn't report up to some screen that lets maintenance kind of keep an eye on everything. And it doesn't feed into another database that's got all your batch information that's maintained by quality, and so on and so on. So if you're going to do that investment, why not make that a smart printer or an IoT device, which would be the new Industry 4.0 kind of words to say that. And that's what we're seeing customers do. If you're paying this investment for these printers, why not build a foundation for that continuous improvement in food safety and integrate that up back to a modern control system? But on the print quality standard and GS128, and I borrowed these from these are supply chain standards from a major orange retailer that all of us have probably been into more than once in our lives. And they're adding new items to GS128, even just from a 2022 update at Walmart. GS128 changed to required on several products. So it's coming into more and more places, this requirement around case labeling. And again, they're commenting inkjet printing non-advisable. Again, there's times where it is good, but it's something that we're kind of seeing in the industry. These additions of printers, and again, why put in a dumb printer in 2022 when you know you're going to need to make changes and adapt as food safety and traceability evolve? And so that's kind of what we're seeing directly on the plant floor and the kinds of equipment we're putting in, the solutions we're putting in, and how people are addressing kind of these trends. I do have Lucy's kind of contact information, and then we'll hold for questions. All right, I see one came in. So first question, pardon me, what are the first 3 steps you believe people should take in their organization to get a traceability program started? I'm going to pass that over to this way. No, that way, Lucy. Down.
I think down. Well, there's I think 3 main ones that I'm thinking about. One would be get your leadership buy-in. I mean, that is absolutely crucial to open paths wherever you need to be. So one of the ways you can do that is by creating a solid business case that proves by taking the different steps to lay the foundation so you can establish that traceability program, you can benefit from that as you go along the way. I mean, some people see traceability programs as, okay, the ultimate thing is I'm going to have all this data of this product moving along. But if we start with step 1, do you have GTINs, global trade item numbers, assigned to your products? Let's start with that. What are the benefits of that? Are you doing data synchronization? You know, you can quantify the benefits of not having, you know, bad data and bad truckload calculations out there. So all of these things, business cases you can build. We have resources around that on our website around data quality and the foundation for traceability. That's one. The other one, because executives like to see the ROI, you know. The second one is actually get people that you need within your organization to buy in what you're doing. So for example, things you want to think about, you might want your IT teams involved, right? Bring chocolate. They like chocolate. I know because I was in IT in my life before. But it's you know, your IT people, your logistics people, you know, they are the ones that might help you realize what the ROI is behind accurate product information if you're looking at the supply chain side of it. Or even, you know, the people that do labeling in your warehouse, you know, who do you need to involve? Outline that, make sure you get approval for their time, and make sure that they understand what the benefit is for them, which it's absolutely there, and you can target it to the teams that you need to collaborate with you. And then the third one, I would say, prioritize, right? You don't want to do everything at the same time. So you would have to understand what are the steps you want to take. If you don't have solid master data and then you jump into a traceability program, well, you'll be tracking things, but you might not even have in your system. So just make sure you go out there, you check with your trading partners. What are you using? Are you already adopting the standards? A lot of them are already, just because of, you know, these big companies, retailers, these big operators already requiring that. So if you don't know, you will be surprised how many partners already have that established. And then learn from the people that have done it. Don't do it alone. Don't do it in isolation. You could save not only months, I would say years. Just go to the people that know, that have done it, and have them help you. Did I say more than 3? Maybe.
That's
Sorry.
great. One, I think it's a little bit less of an issue in case labeling, but we've seen this in primary packaging labeling. If you're adding these programs, you need to also be vigilant, because we've seen cases where marketing departments have removed additional barcoding and that was added for traceability, and you got to keep an eye on that's going to happen. That doesn't happen. I think you're a little less vulnerable to that in cases, but yeah, watch once you get it rolling, make sure no one tries to pull the rug out for marketing reasons or others. Next question. If we have older printers, are there opportunities for this sort of integration? The answer is it depends. So in some older printers, you can purchase expansion modules, like a network card, network module that will go into it. So some of them are upgradable and the printer can be upgraded, and then you're going to need to do a little bit of network work to have a switches and so on to be able to plug those printers in. Some older printers, it's not possible. So it really is on a kind of printer level basis, whether that's going to be an opportunity. And I think many of them are, so that kind of ties back to ROI. Like, in a sense, this isn't necessarily modernizing this and bringing all these devices into printers and laser markers and other devices into centralized control with modern interfaces. It may not be quite as much as you think, and the good news is, if it's really a matter of a few modules or none and networking these devices, you're not looking at a big potentially not a big mechanical install or anything like that, because it's devices you already have and about getting more out of them and controlling them and running them better. So maybe a longer answer, but in some cases it's not a big deal. In some cases it may be there and you're not already using it. So next question, any gotchas or advice you want to share? And I think I'm going to defer that to Lucy around kind of, because I have some gotchas and advice, so maybe I'll ponder that, but I'll kick it to Lucy to go first on gotchas and advice.
Actually, David, I might answer like you would. Is if we're talking about GS1 128 barcodes, I think a big gotcha as far as my previous life was concerned is make sure you test once a new product is out there. And I'm talking about cases. Once a new product is on the line with the printer that you're going to be using in production, make sure you test that barcode. Make sure it has, it's a GS1 128, not a code 128, because then, scanners wouldn't be able to interpret that. Also, just make sure that you have the specific 20 characters or less on log codes, things like that. Like, you can establish a quick check, a quality check. If you do that when the product is just, in the first phase of production, you will avoid having label issues exponentially every time you print it, for a case. So that was a big gotcha based on my previous experience. And the other thing is, I'm going to go back to the prioritize piece. What are the most critical products you have in your system? What is the highest risk, right? Or where can you get the biggest bang for the buck? Prioritize that first, as far as, making sure that your partners or you are labeling those correctly, that you're making those agreements to make sure everybody's capturing information around it. A lot of people are starting, of course, with the food traceability list. When the rule gets finalized in November, it's going to be final. We have one right now that we're looking into, but just look at what you would prioritize, because doing all the products at the same time is hard.
I guess one piece of or gotcha advice I can call out that we've seen is, if you're starting to do this, so you're starting to add more of these GS1 128s, maybe you're upgrading printers across different facilities and different product lines. One piece that we would kind of call out that's been a slightly painful is if all the facilities are left to do this on their own, they will come up with some different choices on things. So one example is, if there's a and some of it makes sense for plants to confirm on their own and make the right decision on their own, and some of it isn't. So one example is on redundancy, and in that picture we showed redundant printers. So one facility may want redundant printers. Because if one goes down, we can put another on. We can keep running until someone can come over and reload or repair that other printer. Another plant may not want that, and that's probably something that is appropriate to decide at the local level. How fast does that line run? How frequently? What's the impact of a printer being down, and so on. There's other items like, what if the first printer prints and then we try to verify and the label's not there, or the label is damaged but present? Or do we label over top? Are we rejecting that case? And so I think one point that we've seen is there's value in corporate oversight on some of that, or at least guidance, so that there's consistency on some of those quality business rules of how you're handling some of the problems or misprints, or it printed but the barcode isn't formatted incorrectly, or those kind of pieces. And I think there's, again, big value in having those business rules the same. Maybe things like redundancy and some of the other pieces at the plant level, but that's one kind of gotcha that I think there's value in standardizing Another question, Lucy. So you can take this one, Lucy. You talked about how standards apply to everyday life, such as electrical outlets. Do you have another example where standards were actually not used and what the outcome of that was?
Let me see. Actually, I have a story which is true. I just don't remember exactly when it happened, but I think it was early 1900s, probably 1904 or something like that. Um, the city of Baltimore saw that their town was burned to ashes, and you can Google this. But it wasn't because they didn't have hoses. It wasn't because they didn't have good fire hydrants. It wasn't because they didn't have trained firemen. Actually, it wasn't because of any of that. It was actually 1904. I just looked at it, and it wasn't because of any of those things. It was because the hoses wouldn't plug into the fire hydrants. It wasn't a standard. So I think that kind of changed later, but it's very interesting to see, you know, those things that sometimes we might be overlooking. How is it adding up in your business, and how is it becoming a fire that you just don't recognize right now because you're not looking at it?
Good one. There's one, if I can riff off that, there's one facility actually that comes to mind that we did a significant amount of work in, and the customer, this is not related to labels or cases or anything, but it was related around RFID systems, and actually two that come to mind. And they installed RFID systems and put them on mobile vessels and containers and bins and pallets that were in facilities. And that vendor has kind of started to go belly up. And that's, I think, one of the other challenges that come from using proprietary hardware, or using maybe not like a broad, you're using proprietary hardware, but it's for a specific vendor standard versus a bigger, broader standard, is you're dependent on the health of that one supplier, because it's not a standard RFID, or I don't know that you're going to run into that with barcodes, but it's not a standard RFID. And then now you're hooked on that vendor. And if that vendor goes under, now you've got lots of physical infrastructure in your plant that's potentially got an RFID where you can't buy hardware to read it anymore. So I think that's one that can hit you. And the value of the standard is, if you're using a standard RFID or a standard data carrier, whichever technology that may be, you're more likely to be able to find multiple vendors over time who can support you with that. Question 5, is it barcode, one word, or bar space code? So now I'm glad to be the arbiter of all spellings in manufacturing and logistics. I would have to say barcode with no space, because bar space code
Yeah,
would
I
be
agree.
perhaps a code of conduct at the bar, or in a bar, or dealing of bars.
At
But
the bar.
barcode would be, it's a barcode. So yeah, I'm going to say no space.
It's the code in the
I'm going to
bar.
say no space, no space. Maybe we'll take one more question. And how are food companies using GS1 28? There's lots that can go into it. And there's no more words in that sentence. Okay. The big one that we're seeing on GS1 28 is addition of lot number and addition of expiration date or best before date. And that's the biggest. If you look up the standard, you can pack a whole bunch of other type of information in it. That's the big one we're seeing right now, primarily on food service products at this point, but we're starting to see that tip into not just food service, or new lines being set up, and they're not food service, but they're preparing for extensions in traceability and so on. So, but primarily right now, those two, I would say batch lot number, and expiration date, best before date, shelf life, sled date, and so on.
Yes, I would like to
Yeah,
add
go ahead. Go ahead.
to that actually. We are preparing right now to update the North America case labeling guideline at GS1 US, and we're bringing together all these associations, manufacturers, distributors. A lot of them are, of course, food service, and a lot of them are in retail grocery that are, have these customer requirements or want to look at into FSMA, and how to meet that. So yes, we have been talking for a while now about food having the GTIN, the date, and the lot as the three main elements in the GS1 128 barcode. Some people have added the serial number, but it doesn't always fit. So that is something that, people are looking into for 2D labeling and things like that. But those are the three main ones. I completely agree,
Awesome.
Dave.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for coming. There will be, if you've subscribed to this or registered for this, I should say, you'll be sent a recording of this session. By all means, the info@grantek.com email is available if you have any other questions around this. Lucy's contact information. Also, I'll show that up quickly, going back one. Lucy's contact information there if, again, you have any other questions. And I hope this has provided some new information on trends in the future of case labeling and where it's going, where it's potentially going, what kind of trends, what's the regulatory environment looking like, and also what, again, what some leading manufacturers are doing right now. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.